I rise to talk a little bit about this bill that I have worked on for a number of years, both as a staff person here and now as an assembly member. I'd like to point out that the suggestion that somehow to be a sponsor of a bill or to be a co-sponsor or to vote on a bill, you have to have direct knowledge of the industry. I would remind people that in the past budget, we had measures that dealt with healthcare workers. Most of us are not in the healthcare industry. We had measures to deal with the direct service providers. Most of us are not DSPs. We, just yesterday, passed 3 of my bills that dealt with compensation and reimbursement related to mental health providers. Most of us are not mental health providers. And indeed, many of you have co-sponsored and voted for a bill that we've passed in this House twice for prevailing wage on private contract projects. Most of us in this House are not construction workers. But let me give you this perspective. I grew up on a farm, a family farm, just under 200 acres. It was my grandfather and grandmother's farm. It was my mom and my dad's farm. It's now my older brother and my sister-in-law's farm. The farm was a dairy farm in the beginning, converted to a beef farm, in large part because the dairy industry changed in the 70s and the 80s. I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would do haying and other things, and more often than not, we would be done at dark, at night. On our farm, I assisted with my brothers and sisters and my mom and dad to log various trees over the years, and then we built the buildings on our farm. Our farm was a family-sustaining farm. It's with that experience, it's with that perspective that I commend the sponsor for moving forward on this bill, for working on it for decades, and more importantly, for listening to the voices of farmers so that we could balance the needs of the farmers in their business along with the farm workers. Some say it didn't go far enough. Some say it went too far, depending on your perspective. But it was a compromise in policy. And indeed, at one time in our history, we all believed that compromise was the art of government. This bill is an artful piece of legislation. It's artful because it balances those competing interests. It's artful because it took into consideration the voices of the farmers who came into my office or when I visited their farms in my district. When they said, all right, if you do collective bargaining, please, we can't allow strikes because that will interfere, especially on seasonal work. We did that. They came into my office and they said, overtime, okay, it's going to be hard. But could you move it to 60 hours? Just move it to 60 hours and I can live with that. We did that. They said on a day of rest, don't make it mandatory. Allow workers to voluntarily work on that day. Farmers, we did that. It's a compromise putting the rights of workers, the dignity and the respect of workers in place like all of other workers have throughout this state. But we also did it acknowledging that there is something different about this industry. The wage board. My colleagues, we have labor wage boards all the time. But usually it's all run by DOL and the commissioner. This wage board, again, an artful compromise because we have the Farm Bureau and we have the AFL-CIO to help the commissioner. Why is that important? Because when you have management and labor together, sitting at the table, walking and talking together, being able to come up with what's the best fit. They're the experts. We're going to let them do that. Our Constitution recognizes that labor is not a commodity. Our Constitution says that workers have a right to organize and a right to bargain collectively. We have a court case now that says the same thing. This bill puts it in statute and recognizes the spirit of our Constitution that labor is not a commodity. It's not a commodity when you're talking construction workers, and it's not a commodity when you're talking farm workers. Once again, though, this bill compromised in that area because of the no strike rule and the no lockout rule. But it's important that we know that the bill puts a system in place for local control. It puts a system in place where the farm worker can stand with and talk with the farmer. And they can work out those scheduling issues. They can work out those hour issues. They can be creative in making their partnership and making sure this business succeeds. They can cooperate to make measures work for that particular farmer. You all know I'm a workers' rights guy. But I'm also a person who firmly believes when management and labor are talking to each other, that they can work it out. And they work it out what's best for both of them. Because they both have the same objective in mind. The business needs to be successful for the worker to be successful, and the worker needs to be successful and productive for the business to be successful. There's no magic to this. We have it in all other industries, and we need it in the farm industry as well. This bill is a statement to the farming industry that we heard you. You may suggest we didn't go far enough, but we listened to their voices and we made compromises on the bill that we have previously passed in this House. Some have mentioned the industry. I firmly believe that the agriculture industry is totally broken. It's broken with federal subsidies, it's broken with tariffs, it's broken with a lot of the federal regulations that are there. It's broken because there's not control, especially in the dairy market, on the market price. And by the way, those market prices aren't set up for Western New York, where I'm in, or Finger Lakes. They're set up for a huge region, a region that's very diverse and different, but yet the federal government, that's how they choose what the market price is. I think that what we need to do is get this bill passed, but then work with the chair of agriculture. Let's do more investment in our agriculture industry. Let's work on this in the budget. Let's make this work. And as has been mentioned during this debate previously, we can make this work for the farm owners, and we can also honor the dignity and respect the workers. Once again, I commend the sponsor for being steadfast, for continuing not to give up, and when we got to a point where it was possible, for listening to both sides and coming up with a way that it can be a win. And again, I remind people, if management and labor are working together to advance the business, that is the best scenario for our farm owners. I am going to proudly vote in favor of this measure, and I am proud to have been a part of it for so many years, and proud to have listened to the farm owners in my district and get to a point where we made the changes they asked for, no strike, overtime at 60 hours, and let us work it out. So, Mr. Speaker, I proudly am going to be supporting this. I encourage all of my colleagues to do so as well.